I've always said, if someone asks me what is actually your best attribute, like that you put down to all of what you've managed to build so far, success in many people's eyes, I would say it's perseverance. You just got to keep going.
Welcome to the Build Smart Blueprint, where we focus on construction entrepreneurs, getting them building the right way, building their business the right way and profitably. Today, we're excited to have Russell Hewes, founder of Russell Hewes RH Limited, one of London's top full-service construction firms. Started as a one-man band in 2013, and it's grown into a team of, I believe, up to 30 operatives that completed more than 300 amazing, outstanding projects. Highly recommend checking out their portfolio. We're going to dive into Russell's journey, and also just see where this conversation goes. Russell's always got a lot of amazing insights and things to talk about. So welcome to the podcast, Russell.
Thanks for the really warm welcome and kind words. The first 100 weren't outstanding and amazing, just to be clear. It was 200 onwards that I managed to start nailing that.
That's great. Well, we did want to talk about your journey. You did start as I believe as an electrician, but we may as well just let you give us a bit of a background on where you came from.
Yeah. So I'll try and do a quick fast. I was born in Kenya, grew up there till I was 12. I had an amazing childhood, really beautiful, friendly place, no complaints there. Then when I was 12, my dad decided that he wanted us to move to the UK for education purposes. My dad's English, and my mom is Kenyan, but I was born in Kenya. And then as we were about to move, a couple of weeks before we were about to do the move, unfortunately, my dad passed away, which was obviously a heavy thing to deal with as a family. Even though we had a very strong base and network in Kenya and none in the UK, my mom asked me the question, and I guess because I'd lost my best friend, I felt like there was nothing left in Kenya. So we decided to move to the UK. So did that at 12. It was really tough times for me and my family. I didn't really have a support network. Mum was a single mum, but we had my dad's house, or our house, in a really nice area in South London, Wimbledon, near the tennis, for those of you that are listening abroad. And just from there, kind of went to school, went through the usual shit that most people go through. You can ask me any questions you want. Got bullied quite a bit. Fought my way through that. And then, obviously decision came to whether I wanted to go to university. And because of my mum kind of was very strong in those early years, kind of went into a depression around the GCSE age. And so at that time, she wasn't really pressuring me or my sister about our education. As long as we went to school and kind of got grades, she kind of let us be. So we were really lucky. I say this now, I wasn't forced to go down an education route. So I decided I didn't want to go to uni because I saw university as a place where if I wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, and I was quite clear that I knew I didn't want to kind of pursue any of those careers. It wasn't really my calling, didn't feel it. So I just went straight into the work market. I did go to college, I did business, and that kind of put me off as well because I was like, what is this business in college? Because they were teaching us stuff. I was like, man, this is so boring. But anyway, I endeavored, got lost, got in a bit of trouble as a teenager, not having a father to kind of put me in line, living double lives apart from my mom. Long story short, I ended up traveling because I was getting in trouble with the police. And so going traveling really reset me and reminded me of my childhood and reminded me of who I really was and the core of like that person that actually cares about people, empathetic, happy childhood, happy life, until obviously it was all uprooted and taken to the UK. So when I came back, I decided to go back to my sort of roots and be driven and went into again work market. I tried everything: high pressure sales, phones for you, curries, door to door knocking. Honestly, you name it. I worked as a suit shop seller, storage, safe store. Man, I literally went through it all. And there was a common theme that kept happening in everything I was doing was like, I was like really hungry, and I have this analogy that most companies, when you're an employee, they dangle a carrot, right? You join, they say, hey, if you deliver these sales targets, or you convert these customers, or whatever it is, whatever industry, sell these many suits, we'll give you a raise, or we'll give you a promotion, or whatever else. Even as a decorator, I remember the guy was like, oh, I'll buy you a van, and we'll grow this business. And I'm the sort of person, if you dangle a carrot with me, most people expect the carrot will take a year or two. I'm getting that carrot in 3 months. So by the time, they don't have a chance to pull the carrot away. So I've got it in my hand, and they'd always let me down. False promises, same bullshit. I'm sure listeners had that experience. You guys have had the similar experience when you work for people. And yeah, I just got fed up. I was just like, man, this is no way to live. So I decided to explore. Luckily, one of my good friends was a principal at college, Lambeth College. And I was like looking at my path, and I was like, right, I want to start business in the future, but I need to make sure that I'm earning a good amount of money. And once I learn a skill, that I'm going to stay on that money. So if I decide to go traveling or decide to do something else, I can come back and know that I'm earning that base rate. Like no one can take that away from me. And so, sorry, I'm talking a lot, guys. I'm trying to set the scene. Yeah, just interrupt me any time.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
No, I think a lot of this is really relevant to, we both know where your business and how you've grown now, but I'm learning a lot of stuff about your past and what's led to it. So I think this is all
okay.
Really relevant.
Great.
Keep going.
Great. I'm almost coming to the end, so you can ask some questions. I'm just trying to build up the scene for everyone. And yeah, so basically, a little touch point, it's not what you know, it's who you know. At the time, being an electrician was a kind of sought after trade. This is old school, traditional tradesman. And they wouldn't let me into the college unless you had a job. I mean, at the time, it was going through a recession, and tried everything. No one was giving me a job. And so for all of you apprentices out there, and I know it's a similar time right now, like you just got to keep plugging away. And eventually, because the guy was a principal, he got me onto the course. He basically was friends with all of the guys and just said, like, Russell's on it. So they accepted me on the course, even though I didn't actually have a placement. And I basically went and got a labouring job because no one would take me on. And I said to this company, I remember in Isha, he was actually an old referee of mine who run a building company. I just said, like, look, I want to become an electrician. I'll happily be your labourer, £40 a day at the time. And I just knew when it was a big project, I knew when the electrical company came, my opportunity to be there, I'll be ready with both hands to grab it. And lo and behold, they came, and I was there, screwdriver in hand, trying to help all the electricians. And the big company still about now, Osborne and Collins, gave me that first opportunity and took me on. And I was very lucky as well. So I started my apprenticeship, and that's kind of how I became an electrician. I can tell you more of the journey, but I think maybe a pause to kind of let you guys ask some questions.
Yeah, definitely. You're even there. Something that I've always thought is you're always reflecting, and you're always reflecting on your mindset. And I'd be interested to know, is that something that is a recent thing, or even back then when you were an apprentice, were you reflecting on your mindset and how it's changing, and or were you not as goal driven? Was it something maybe not as obvious?
So there was two things that really I remember fundamental shift, but it's only later in life I realized it, right? So when I was 14, obviously from 12 to 14, it was a horrible time. I lost my best friend, my dad. Like, we did everything together, like literally everything. And one of the examples I can give you was when I was like 10, he taught me how to play pool, right? And he taught me so well, I was so bloody good that we used to go down we lived in between two hotels, and in Kenya. He used to take me down there, and then all the guys, because my dad's blonde with blue eyes, And we're in Kenya. They say mzungu mzungu, we'll play you, let's bet some money. And he'd just sit there and be like, oh no, why don't you play my son? And then obviously they were like, yeah, whatever, 10-year-old son. And they were like, so they'd be like, okay, let's bet some money. And they'd like up the stakes massively. And I'd whoop all these breads, like grown men, like every single one of them, like tear them all apart. And I'd always, when the money would give, he'd give me the money. It's like, you earned it. And so I would buy my dad beers, right? And so from an early age, I tell this story because when I was 14 and I came to the UK, like culture, it was a culture shock in many ways. But one of the things is in Africa, like, I'm not saying that isn't the case here, but like the number one rule before every other rules is you respect your elders. And so when I came to the UK, I know it was like that previously, but it felt like that had been lost here. So when I used to go to my friends' houses and stuff, I would look at the relationships between some of my very good friends and between them and their dads. And, I had multiple examples of this. And one day at 14, I don't know, I just realized how lucky I was to have that relationship that I did have with my dad. Like, I'd already bought him his first pint. Most people wait till like 18. I'd done that at 10. And so many other examples I could give you. Just for the listeners, I hope you get the drift of what I'm trying to say. And so I think that was like the first time that I realized I changed something that was like really dark, really heavy, really horrible situation, but I somehow managed to turn it. And from that point on, I never really wallowed, or I missed him always, but I just used to say I'm so lucky. I just constantly used to tell how lucky I was that I had that opportunity to spend that time with him. And obviously I'd prefer to have had him there up until now, but when I see other people in their interactions, I just always like, look, I was really lucky to have that opportunity. So I think that was the first mindset shift. And the other thing, just while I'm on the point of him, is I didn't realize this again as well. Everyone always asks, why are you so competitive? Like, I'll be on competing in every single situation. It's actually, I'm not competing with anyone else. I realize I'm competing with myself, because like I said, we used to live in between two hotels. Every day after school, my dad would take me down to the pool. He'd get his stopwatch out and I'd like try and beat my time. And this was every single day. We're talking about 365 days a year for like, till I was like 12, till he passed. And so I think, again, I got that competition. So I'm like, I think it's ingrained into me. Like I'm not actually competing with anyone else. I'm not competing with other building companies or other electricians or in football. I'm competing with myself. I'm always just trying to improve and be better on what I have done previously.
And do you think that's, I mean, just bringing it back to, you mentioned there, any apprentices out there, do you think that's something that can be learned? Do you think this is something that you can instill? Or also, I'd like to know, do you ever look at people, apprentices, workers that go, you could be something different, like you could actually go and build your own firm? You could.
Yeah, it's a difficult question, because me and my colleague Marcin talk about it all the time, right? It's definitely a mindset, without a shadow of a doubt. Now the question is, can you instill that mindset? I believe you can, but I think it has to happen quite early on. In my example, it was kind of ingrained to me unknowingly quite early on. But going back to like being an apprentice, it wasn't an enjoyable experience for me. So the first 4, 5, 6 months, I was very lucky. I had this guy called Jason Lambert, who I'm still very good friends with. He's a mixed race guy. They had hired him in, luckily on this project, because they were oversubscribed at the time. So Jason basically took me under his wing, and they kept him for like a year, and they were just like, Jason, you have Russell. And I just learned everything I could. I was like a sponge of Jason. And eventually when the work dried up, Jason got moved on, and then I got put into the pool of the other guys. And man, hell began. And like, in an old school English apprenticeship, I'm pretty sure back in the day this was like all apprenticeships, yeah? It's like kill or be killed mentality. Like they are there to make your life hell. And like in a weird way, like I kind of think that is needed and required, and what is missing in the current apprenticeships these days. like I was bullied to a certain degree. Obviously, I'd experienced that in school, so I kind of knew how to think. So I'll give you an example. This guy, another mixed race guy, he was South African, and he was just like getting terrorized. So obviously, when I came along, he was like licking his lips and rubbing his hands. Finally, someone else to take the brunt. And I remember the first day I didn't have tools. He was like, "Carry my tools, bitch." And I was just like, "What?" Obviously, I didn't have any of this with Jason. And I was like, what are you talking about? And obviously, you know, my background, like, I was used to get in trouble quite a lot. So I was just suddenly having this guy who we should have been on the same side, being both big straight, being like calling me a bitch, carrying my tools. And I just kind of had to suck it out because he was like, you're using my tools, so you carry my tools, right? And he'd like send me to the shop. Well, this guy's a little bit of an idiot because in the shopping list, they have these things like sky hooks or, you know, like loads of terminology that you just don't have a clue about. So he'd send me to the shop, to the wholesalers, and was like, right, go get 100 meters of cable, 20 back boxes, and then sky hooks, and then, like installation cable. I can't remember, but basically there was 3 other terms, and he put all of them in there. So when I was driving in my car to go get this, I remember sitting there, and I was like, this guy's trying to fuck me somehow. And excuse my French. And before I go into the wholesalers, I was like, okay, sky hook. Oh, long wait. That was the other one. Make sure you get a long wait, yeah? And I found them all, and I rang Jason, and I was like, Jason, I think I found 2. There's definitely one more in here. Anyway, he helped me find, heater bricks. Yeah, these heater bricks are like the heaviest things you can imagine, yeah? So I go in. As soon as I go in, like 6 guys behind the counter all go quiet, yeah? He's rang ahead of them to let them know I'm coming. You can just see them all like relishing and licking their lips. And so I start reeling off the list, missed the first one. They're all just waiting in anticipation to like fuck me over. Missed the second, which is the third one. And then I gave them the list, and they're all just like, is that it? Are you sure that's it? And I was like, yeah, that is it. Actually, no, can I get one more thing? So obviously went back. He was absolutely pissed off. He came, he's like, you didn't get everything on the list, like before I'd even arrived through the door. I was just like, you're a mug. You tried to get me. And so this is what I mean. He wasn't that smart. Like, had he done one thing, I would have got done. And sort of going back to the mindset thing, he carried on terrorizing me, and I had to accept it because I was using his tools. He had so many tools. So I went to the owner of the company. This is 2 weeks in, and I just said, like, look, I'm obviously not paid enough to buy all the tools, but if you could just guide me to buy all the tools, I'll pay you back. You can just deduct half it out of my wages, whatever you think's fair. And I remember the guy was so surprised. He was like, oh, none of our apprentices ever asked that. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, I need tools because otherwise I'm using everyone else's. So anyway, I got the tools. I remember I bought a bag, everything. No one knew about it. Yeah. And then by just pure chance, we all that Monday got sent to a job. I still remember it so clearly where it is, just outside Isha. We all arrived in the car park. They're all there, the whole company, right? 10, 15 guys. And lo and behold, as I get out of the car, my tools are in the back. And he's like, oh, there's my bitch. And then he's like, so as I walk over, he's like, can you carry my tools? And I was like, nah, you can fuck off. I'm not carrying your tools. He was like, what? What do you mean? Everyone was obviously like surprised. And then I opened the boot, pulled out my whole tool. I've got my own tools. You can carry your own fucking tools from now on. And then went on, and he could, so from that point on, I just gained the respect from everyone in the company, and he never tried it again because obviously no one else ever tried it again. So hopefully, I don't know if that answered your question, but like there is a bit of a mindset. First, it wasn't I fought back straight away. I had to prepare myself and wait for the right moment to prove so that he couldn't essentially terrorize me or bully me anymore. But
there's a go out and get it aspect of it that I think is what you need as an owner, as someone building a business. It's like, I don't like this situation, I don't agree with it, but I'm not just going to blame it on other people and look for someone to come and save my ass. It's like, what can I do? What can I go and do now to resolve the situation?
Well,
which is business, right? It's all the time. It's
and like advice I'd give to apprentices now, you know, like, can you teach it? Do you know what? I do think you can teach it. It's like, that's the question you're asking. It's like, try, like when I was on the tools, or when someone else is on the tools, right? They have to think as they're doing. So technically, it doesn't matter how good they are, they're one step behind, because like say they're installing a socket, right? So they get the chasing machine, they cut out the socket. Before they put the chasing machine down, they need to put the chasing machine down and then think, oh, what's next? I need to get my level to make sure it's level, right? Then they get their level out, and then it's like, oh, what's next? Okay, I'm going to get the box and test to see if it's in. And then once it's in, it's like, okay, what's next? I need to drill a hole. So the point is, if you're an apprentice, if you know, I'm not talking about first day. I'm talking about like 2 weeks. If you just watch the guy for 2 weeks in any trade, in any walk of life, this is my belief, then you should be able to pay attention close enough to then start to anticipate what that person needs next, right? Because he has to think. Like if you keep the repetitive task going. So for me, it was just like, I would then pick up the item that he needed next in anticipation and hand it to him. And so he'd like go to turn around and I'd be there, rather than, and like the level's in his hand. The drill was ready with the right bit in it. And obviously, again, that's not day one, right? It's week 2, month 2, month 3. And you don't need to be a genius to do that. You just need to pay attention to what the person who you're learning from is doing every day. And if you pay close enough attention, you should get to the speed of making the decision before the person can make that decision. And so, like, for me, I believe that can be taught. You don't need to have a high IQ to do that, especially in a skilled job. And I think it potentially applies across all fields, maybe other than when you get into complicated maths or language and things like that.
Russell, can I ask on the topic of apprenticeships and a kind of being the best apprentice you can be, there's this common and I think justified reluctance around apprenticeships, where, especially trade apprenticeships, where I guess you can be, as a teacher, you can be a bit reluctant to give everything and show the apprentice everything, because they're essentially going to take that knowledge and go somewhere else and set their own thing up. And to some extent, you did that, right? And I'm curious, and this is really again for, I think, those apprentices that might be listening to this, or somebody that's maybe in an apprentice type situation where they're learning, is how do you think you can absorb as much information as you can, but not feel like a threat to the person that you're learning from, if that makes sense? Or is it more of a like, well, it's got to be the person that's learning has to have a certain mindset or a certain kind of not looking to you as a threat? Do you know what I mean?
So it's interesting. Like, obviously, I didn't have this thinking process back then, but I think it comes down to two simple things, right? On both sides. It's an abundance mindset or a scarcity mindset. And what that means for anyone that doesn't understand is like, when you have abundance love for your family, you give it willingly without expecting anything back, and you receive it the same back abundantly, right? Say you go into a relationship and you start having beef or whatever in your first couple of relationships. For any of you lucky ones that have never had beef, then I'll take my hat off to you. But it can create a situation of scarcity, because suddenly it's like, you're always annoying, you're always doing this, so you don't want to give that person your love, right? And then what ends up happening is it creates a scarcity cycle, which is they don't want to give your love, blah, blah, blah. It works out. And this happens in anything, money, work. I think this applies. So with the apprentice thing and an owner as well, teaching an apprentice, it's like, I think you have to make a decision that the only way to train someone properly so that you can grow your business is you have to just give them everything that you have to offer. And that's what I always did. And I had gone through the process, heart-wrenching, to train someone for a year or two, and you give them all this knowledge, And say it takes average person 3 to 4 years, 2 to 4 years, should we say, to become a good apprentice, right? There are people out there that have the skill set that could train someone within a year, and they know it. But that means dedicating and slowing down everything else that they're doing to train someone for a year. So the expectation is you would at least hope that they would give you, in my case, I believe if you give them a year, the minimum they give you back is a year, right? But the hope is that they're going to stay with you 4 or 5 years so you can continue to grow the business. But if you're as good as the person who can train someone in a year, that means you've turned someone back then from £40 to be able to afford to be worth £100, in some cases £150. Nowadays money, apprentice minimum's probably on £110 a day, and then in a year, if you train them really well, they're worth like £150, £200 a day. Now, they have the skill set, you've taught them everything they know. They can now suddenly just go out there and earn 150, 200 quid, but you're, as a business, you're going to only still to afford to pay them 120 quid. So I think communication is key. It's about by communicating on both sides, it took me about 6 apprentices to learn that. And to learn that you don't own anyone. They're not your slaves. Just because you teach them doesn't mean you own them. And equally, on the other end, just because someone taught you something doesn't mean that you have to stay with them forever. I like the term treat people well enough, teach people well enough that they can leave, but treat them well enough that they don't want to leave. And like, that's not just a given rule. But I think communication is the key. I've actually grown. 2 of my most successful apprentices now run their own companies. For me, that's a testament. And actually, before they left, they were costing me an arm and a leg. They had vans, holiday pay, I was buying their uniform, sick pay, all of their materials, fuel. And every time they left, it was like heart-wrenching. We're always like, never going to burn the bridge. I wish them well. And they moved on. And you know what? Most of them come back and say, Russell, can I have a couple of days work here? And I make more money from them than I ever could as employees. Because now suddenly I don't have to worry about any of that shit. They got their own van, their own, they have to figure out. They are out in the big bad world now. And if you're honest and sort of have integrity and you communicate and don't go into going back to that scarcity mindset, which is like, I trained you and, I can't believe you're leaving and fuck you basically, like, and don't ever ring me. I can't believe I ever think. It's like, actually have an abundance mindset. It's like, man, there's loads of other people. If you can be bothered to go through that journey again, more often than not, they always came back and they help support. I could ring either of them now. If I got into a tight spot, they would drop absolutely everything and come and help me out. Like, facts. So
yeah, I'm really glad you went like that, because that wasn't even in some ways where I was asking, but the way you've answered that has really resonated with a lot of conversations I've had with builders who are really holding on to their IP of their knowledge. And I know from an external point of view, I can see like you need to get somebody else on and share this so that you can grow. But it's such a common answer to be like, oh, but then they're just going to fuck off and become a competitor. But the way you've broken down, I think, your journey and how you've looked at that being on both sides, I think is really, really powerful. And I think a lot of owners and builders could kind of resonate with how you've said it, and hopefully will kind of open up to that idea of just kind of letting go of an expectation.
Yeah, and I think like on the apprentice side, I think like if even if the person is terrorizing you for the first 2 years, I do think they're doing that. They're toughening you up. You're soft meat, right? You need to be toughened up a little bit, because like when you're out there and you're on your own, like you're gonna be trying to open something, slip and stab yourself with a screwdriver, and there's going to be blood everywhere, and you're going to have to clean it up, and it's 5 o'clock and you're rushing because you wanted to go meet your missus, or you had football or thing, and that happened to me so many times. And then it's just like, I'm not going anywhere. If I didn't rush, I would have finished maybe 15 minutes later. Now I'm here for another 2 hours. And the moment that settled, and I just cracked on, and then I was able to calmly finish the job, and it's learning that perseverance. But also, the point I was trying to make actually was, if someone teaches you and you are a trustworthy person and you're loyal, show them that, be that loyal person, and give them time. You know, I remember one of my best apprentices came and said to me, he was like, look, I'm planning to leave. I was like, oh shit, he said, I'm going to give you 3 months. I was like, I'm actually just about to go away for a long time and I really need you. Can you stay 6 months, please? You know, and he didn't really want to, but because I'd given him all of that knowledge, and bear in mind, he was good, so he learnt it. I think that's the other thing owners should remember. It's like, you gave that knowledge, right? But he also learnt it. He took the action to listen. He took the time to learn it. And when you have a shit apprentice, how dead is that? It's like, when you have a good apprentice, you can't be holding the knowledge because you think they're going to leave. So
Yeah.
if you have an honest conversation, I think on both sides, you just give the person back what they've given to you if you're an apprentice, or at least communicate what your plans are.
So you're setting your apprentice. Sounds like it's around 2010 time. How do you get from there to then running your firm like you are now? Can you take us back to that story and talk about that kind of transition and the kind of growth in the early days?
Yeah. So basically, finished my apprenticeship, and I told my boss at the time, was like, hey, I need to do my AM2s. Will you pay for it? Right? And I'll pay back. And he was like, scarcity mindset. No, because I'm not going to pay for it, because what if you leave? So it's so funny actually talking about this, right? What if you leave? It's too much money. It's going to be like $3,000, and then you're going to get qualified, and then you're just going to leave me. And I was like, man, I've been loyal to you for like 3 years. Like, I'm not going to leave you. I just want to be qualified so I can earn a little bit more money. So anyway, I remember he sent me this email, and it was like basically refused to pay for my AM2s. I left the next week because I was like, you don't believe in me, and you don't believe in the trust that I've built with you. And that's what you promised me as well, carrot, going back to the carrot thing. And so I left, and I went and worked for a few other companies, some one-man bands. And once I felt I had enough knowledge, which was 2, 3, 4 years later, I took the time. I decided I'm going to start on my own. I'd built up what I believed was enough clientele. It was about 2 weeks' work. I remember it. I remember thinking, yeah, I got 2 weeks' work. I'm ready. So I made the jump. After those 2 weeks, man, it was like a dry 4 months of no work, like bits and pieces here and there. I was like, oh my God, I've made the worst decision of my life at the time. Whenever you've made the best decision of your life, you are guaranteed to be put in a situation where you're going to say the words, I've made the worst decision of my life. But you have to keep persevering, because you've made that decision and you can't go back. Never go back. Jack Reacher. And so I kind of went through the market a little bit, decided I was ready to leave, left. And then I just really doubled down on focusing. I realized I needed an apprentice because I was doing everything on my own. I took on my first apprentice, who is a very good friend of mine and still is. He'd got in trouble with the police. He went to prison. When he came out, he was in Sheffield. And I was just like, you're my friend. I know you quite well. I'm looking for a new apprentice. Why don't you come back to London and I'll teach you everything I know. And he thought about it, and he said, yeah. And he joined, and it was one of the best decisions of my career, and I believe his, because he's got a very successful electrical company now. And we just went out there and we delivered the best service we could, right? So electricians have a bad rep. They're untidy. They always leave their clippings and everything. They never tidy up after themselves. They generally turn up on time, but even sometimes they turn up late, have coffee, chat for an hour. They're always the first ones to leave. They demand when they're on site, everyone clears the room and makes sure that it's ready for them. So it was just kind of like, I'm from Kenya. I am English, but like this English culture thing is not working. So I just flipped everything on its head, right? And Rafe, my friend, the electrician, who was my apprentice, he's English, but he was with me. He was just like, let's just deliver a good service. So we turned up on time. Instead of finishing at 3, we finished at 5. Whenever the sites were empty, we worked till 8:30. Then I got my second apprentice, then my third apprentice, and that was our culture. We'd work like 5 days a week, 8 to 5. We were clean, we were tidy, we communicated with the client. We treated each project like it was our project. So if a project manager was shit and not doing things or not communicating with the client, we'd step in and be like, because otherwise it would affect our work. So we'd like step in and jump in and like, hey, you need to do this, and this person hasn't organized that, and it's not my job, but like I just did it so that I could do my job correctly. And I remember once this guy who had a big construction company, basements and everything, he was like, how do you get your guys to stay till 8:30 like twice a week? I mean, twice a week. And I was just like, to be honest, like we love it because it's the time where we get to really bond. Like everyone else is gone, we've got the site to ourselves, we order a bit of pizza in, we're chatting, the vibe, the energy, that's where we really build culture and camaraderie, which is really one of the most difficult things to build in construction. And it just snowballed from there. I went from 1 electrician to 15 electricians in less than a year, just by doing the right things, breaking the mold, supposedly working harder than everyone else, and then everyone just wanted to work with us, and I'll be honest, that was the first, at the same time, success, and every construction owner will know this. If you're successful in construction, the success is normally what kills you, because the first challenge as a new business owner is when you're getting so much work, you don't know how to say no. You just don't say no, and you're getting pulled from pillar to post. Everyone's spread out, you're jumping from one job to another. Your organized system where you'd be like, you got to book 2 weeks in advance and we'll come. If you say 3 days, we'll get it done in 3 days. Turned into, because you're literally getting pulled. You've got so many jobs on. Someone will be like, I need you here. And because you're like, okay, we're coming there tomorrow. So you just lose all of your systems and processes just break down if you even had any in your mind. And you just jump to whoever screams and shouts the loudest because you're trying to keep the whole thing together when you're in this chaotic growth success phase, hiring more people who, and then you've lost your culture, so you just need one bad apple to poison the rest, and they start leaving at 4, and you can't be on every job. You have 6, 7 jobs, and all the guys, and like I've watched so many companies, especially subby companies, fall apart and break down, and the best subbies I work with now, they say 2-3 man team. That's it. As soon as you go bigger, you don't make profit. You lose everything. Quality drops down and everything else. And I agree with that as a sensible, sound way to make money. But I guess for the super hungry people like myself, that just doesn't. That's not what I wanted. I wanted more. And then
Russell, can I ask, just before, because I think you're going to go to shortly towards the transition, from electricians to doing other things. But before you do that, I want to ask about, because it's easy, I think, when you're at the stage you're at with your business, where there are projects coming in and multiple projects being run, to look back at those early days and gloss over, the 1 electrician to 15 electricians in one sentence. But that's a huge jump.
Yeah, it's massive. Yeah.
And more about, like, obviously what would have come with that is getting multiple jobs. I wanted to ask, like, when you were at the stage where you just sort of, you had one job, maybe one client giving you work, what were you doing to then scale up to get multiple jobs? Were you, because I know there's a lot of guys that listen to this and we speak to as well, where they're hungry, they've got like enough money to just keep themselves above water, but they want to get more jobs, but they don't necessarily have the money or the time to invest in marketing and things like that. Did you focus on, just delivering great service and the referrals will come, or was there something else that allowed you to get more jobs in?
No, but I did a bit of both. Days? So the first thing is when you get in with a firm, they don't give you all of their jobs, right? They just give you one. You get a taster, and so I had loads of someone who give me I could guarantee 2-3 jobs. And then you have guys giving you a taster, and you've got to make sure you nail those, and then suddenly it will open up because you're delivering a high quality service to what the other customers, what the other suppliers are giving them, and more often than not for cheaper. But I was always also hitting the phones, chatting to everyone on site, being I would love to work more. If I saw an architect, can you get me as the electrician into the projects? So it wasn't I was still on the tools and I was still working, but any opportunity that I could speak to someone that I thought maybe had the keys to the next level, I was on it. If I saw a hoarding of a new company, I'd ring the company and be like, hey, I'm Russell Hewes, I've got an electrician, I've sell exactly what I'm doing. I've got 15 electricians. Most people take 2 weeks to wire a loft. I get done in 3 days. I work 8 to 8. And when someone hears that, they're supposedly there's this kid who can do this. And it's when you eventually someone will give you that opportunity and then you deliver what you said. It's what? Oh shit. Okay. So yeah, you have to hit the phones. And it's the same if you're an apprentice and no one is taking you on. It doesn't matter if the door shuts in your face 100 times. If someone tells you promises you 100 times, you just got to keep going. And I learned that perseverance. I have always said, if someone asks me what is actually your best attribute, that you put down to all of what you've managed to build so far, success in many people's eyes, I would say it's perseverance. You just got to keep going. You've got to persevere. You guys know from starting your business at the moment, it's you can't ring 5 people and expect to get off the ground. You got to ring hundreds and hundreds, especially if you're a brand new business. If you're a plumber, you got to ring every builder in your local area. You got to put ads in. If you can't afford ads, print leaflets, hand them out. Make sure you got a business card. So I was always doing that from early, but I wasn't marketing. I didn't even have a sign written van. I was still working out my car most of the time.
It's interesting because I think that there's, especially with nowadays, and you get bombarded with adverts about, or you just get bombarded with this idea that you can send an email, post an ad, and you'll just get all this work in. And you often find, I guess, construction entrepreneurs in their early days will always have aspirations to just become a main contractor, and slowly they'll build their way up to bigger and bigger jobs, and they do the kind of traditional, hopefully someone will ring on the phone and I'll get a job. But you're demonstrating in this journey that you're kind of sharing with us, there's this other potential framework or way of doing this, which is start as a specialist subcontractor, because there's a lot more brute force ways you can get your way in to win clients,
and you're in there.
And making the phone calls, you can just do the work yourself in your own control and without ruining your story too much, because you'll get to it. Then you basically became your client, right? That you grew enough to get the confidence, the knowledge, the contacts to say, oh, well, I can actually take a bigger piece of this pie, which I think you could have achieved, probably knowing you, in the same way if you started just doing, little bathroom refurbs and growing.
Definitely.
But it would have taken you longer, I think, and you would have spent a lot more money in getting there.
And I think that's the other thing. It's so I'm doing electrics and it's all going really well. And one of the things I'm trying to think when's the right time to mention it. Maybe I'll mention it now. Is I didn't realize. So as an electrician, I'd work for Bob, who's just the one-man builder who gets his own little jobs. He maybe has one labourer with him, and he needs an electrician to wire a bathroom. And then you've got, a contractor who's got five jobs, all the way to Kensington and Chelsea, which is hundreds of millions, triple basements, you know, like I would work for whoever. Like even at the peak of the electrical success, I would still make sure Bob is looked after, right? Because it's Bob who got me off the ground. Now, there is a time where if Bob's work's not profitable, I want to be clear, at some point you need to look at that and think about your resources and your time. But I think that's much, much later in the journey. While you're still growing, you still got to look after the people who got you there, because they're consistent, they trust you, you've always delivered. Don't let them down, because if you start letting them down, then you've got no chance when you're growing, because every time you grow, it means you're going to let the people down in your new growth area. But yeah, so I realized that I was like, I didn't realize at this time, I realized this later, but I'll tell you it now. I realized I was on site with all of like Bob, fucking massive triple basement companies in Chelsea and everything in between, right? And in when I was in the middle of it all, I was like dealing with architects, interior designers, and I loved it. So like I feel quite comfortable and confident when I was speaking with these people. So, you know, some people, when an architect or interior designer and the client comes, they kind of like go into their shell and don't really want to get involved in that. And that's fine, but you need to find someone in your team who can talk, because they're the ones who are going to open the doors, and they're the conversations that help you learn how things work at a higher level. So I used to converse with these people and chat to them, and clients more often than not, as the electricians, we're the first one in. Can you go and put temp power in? So you meet them there, and you're the last one out because you have to sign the certificate. And so in between, people like you and trust you. So you'd hear everything. You'd hear what the builders have been up to, what they hadn't done. You'd hear what the subbies were saying about the builders and what they're saying about the clients. You'd hear what the clients were saying the whole journey all the way through. I'd be sitting there watching who worked, who didn't work. As soon as the site manager left, who just like straight away went for a cup of tea. You know, I was actually conscious of all of these things, because I wanted to know, when I wanted to build my company, like, how do you profile the hard workers? How do you profile the loyal people? How do you make sure you don't get those guys who, as soon as like, you know, as soon as someone comes on, the paintbrush is up and they're like, and then, you know, as soon as they're gone, it's like, oh, cup of tea, great, da 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 da. So I realized, and this is later on, as you know, I want to make sure people understand this point, is I was standing on a mountain of value. I like had this massive mountain of data and value that I was inside for like 10 years. Clients, subcontractors, subbies, one-man bands, builders, interior designers, architects, like specialists, everything, you know. And I didn't know this at the time. I was just an electrician, just like absorbing. Then one of my best friends was like, "Oh, Ross, could you please help me out? We've bought a flat in Chiswick, in Chiswick Village. There's about 300 flats. No, sorry, tell a lie. About 100 flats there, I think." And I was like, "Oh, what? I'll do your electrics, but like, no." He was like, "No, can you just organize the whole thing, like tiler, plumber, thing?" And I was like, to be honest, I do know every trade. Like, I know all the good guys. I was still a little bit reluctant. And then I just remember thinking, it was like, Russell, how many project managers do you sometimes do on site? Like, you're always helping and organizing and stuff. And I was like, always thought, man, I move 15 electricians every 2 or 3 days. Like, you know, seamlessly in my head. And when there's no work and someone doesn't answer the door, I'm so quickly able to like move them across and make sure they're all busy and find work if someone falls through. And I always wondered, like, how does a construction company who's just got 6 months to do something, they don't have to move anyone anywhere, they got 3 or 4 guys, like, how is it late? How do you make so many fuck ups? How do you piss the client off? Like, how are all these things that everyone knows about and have heard happening? I just don't get it. At every level, by the way. And so I was like, fuck it, I'm going to give it a go. So I took on the project. I did the electrics, as well as running all my other projects. Got electrician, plumber, tiler, painter, like all these people that I'd accumulated. And finished the job on time, if not early, to a really high standard. And that was the first job I ever did. And the flat ended up selling for the most amount of money in that block of flats. It's not council, but that had ever been sold for. And so like I was like, wow, okay. I started realizing I added value. And I think to that point, I wanted to talk about one thing before I pass back to you is like, I truly believe that the intention set by the client, which is essentially the energy, like I want to do this and transform my home. Is it I want to make the most money possible, or is it actually I want to make this place beautiful? Wherever that intention is then passed on to the architect, interior designer, or to direct to the main contractor, and then that they absorb that, and then if they're good, they pass that on to their team or their subbies, and that channel, if it happens in a fluent way, you get something that you can feel, like the energy of a room. You know, when you go into someone's house and it's just like, it feels really nice. There's a sort of energy to it, or a new, like a new block or new building. Like, I feel like that's what I feel that I do when I transform homes. I try to really understand what it is the client is looking to do, and I make sure I pass that on to my team. You know, like this is what they're really looking for. And that energy, because, you know, we all put every single day, we do it for money, but it's our life source energy that we're putting into everything we do. And it's about the intention. And that's why, for me, when you go to commercial buildings, they're soulless, because the intention's to make money. And he says to the architect, I just want to make money. So can you just make as many boxes as you can for the maximum square footage so that we can make money? Then they're looking for the cheapest contractor. So the cheapest contractor is only thinking about how he can make money for the most amount. Then he hires the cheapest subcontractors. And that's why you get a pile of shit that is soulless, lifeless buildings all over the fucking country, if not all over the world now. Whereas when you get a client who really cares and is willing to pay the money to achieve that, and everything aligns along the way, you walk into that space, you can feel it. You know, like we've had clients that like teared up when they actually move into the property, and you hear that with really good interior designers and really good architects. And so I believe that's something I wanted to share. I truly believe that the intention from the first person, but also you can pick up that intention and transform it, even if it's not there or exists.
Have you had challenges, Russell, with communicating that piece you just talked about there at the end to your team? Because, you know, I know you've invested a lot in yourself. You know, you're an advocate of kind of coaching, training, you know, mindset, but you can't always expect everybody to be in the same kind of looking at things in the same direction in your company. So I'm curious, like, how you found that. Do you find you have to change the language to put it in ways that others understand, or do you just kind of?
So I think there's two things. Before I go into that, I think it's important. So eventually, once I started pivoting towards the construction, right, I realized, oh, okay, I'm quite good at this. I'll start doing smaller projects on the side, like bathrooms, kitchens, whatever. So that's what I started doing alongside all the electrical stuff. And I just slowly started doing small project, you know, 10K, 15K, 20K, 30K, 40K. So that was my continuous journey upwards, right? Making mistakes. Every time I made a mistake, and they're thousands, I would make sure I learned from it. Like, and I'll give you some examples of really bad mistakes that could have broken a company, and having integrity and doing it the right way will always serve you in the future. But like, so I lost my train of thought there, but what was I saying?
So you were talking more about, so my question was about communicating this kind of,
yes,
the energy intention, but you were also just talking about more of the journey of like, once you hit that first development, took on small jobs.
Sorry, I was going to say that when you're a contractor, right, you look at all these successful contractors. And I did the same. I was like, oh God, how do they do it? So most of it happens, you look at the successful ones in the higher tier, and what they do is they have a good branding, good reputation, they delivered loads of projects, but more often than not, they win the project, and they have trusted subcontractors. They break it up into 10, 6, 12 packages, right? They bricklaying, groundsworks, electrical, plumbing, decorating, plastering, finishes, whatever. So they all break it up and they give it to the trusted traders, and it's down to the subbies' responsibility to make sure that they do it at the cost that they said they were going to do it. So obviously they just need the contractor just needs a very good project manager. So that way they generally know exactly how much money they make. So if they win a 200k job, they know if they break it up and before they've even won the job, they get all their costs from their subbies and they know they're going to make 50k, say, right? So they know what their profit is, and only if they fuck it up are they going to lose money. The problem is when you're coming from the lower end of the tier and you're looking at all these guys, like you think, oh yeah, I'll do the same. And I tried to do the same. And then I was like, and probably most builders like, why doesn't it work? And it doesn't work because in the higher tier, you can afford to pay higher money because you're earning more money. So you're getting professional subcontractors who come in and, you know, you can trust that if their price is their price and they will deliver it as long as you don't fuck it up on the project. At the lower tier, man, you do not know who you're going to get on the day. You might have someone who you've worked with for 2-3 years time. Dave, Jermaine, Bob, it doesn't matter. And he's had an argument with his wife and he comes onto your project. Maybe he doesn't even turn up because he's had a shit day with his wife or something's happened. And maybe he does turn up and he's in a foul mood and he's been effing and blinding all the way to the thing. And suddenly his 8 out of 10 work is now 5 out of 10. He screws through one of your the plumber's pipes, or it's a shit show. So that one of the things I really struggled with was I was like, Jesus, how does anyone ever make any money? Like, because you're getting all these different varying levels. So I'm a subby, I'm an electrician, so I know I'm going to deliver a 7 or 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 at the time. And you hope that all these subbies, they just need to deliver an 8 because we're not in that top tier. We're down here. Actually, people can expect a 7, but I'm trying to deliver an 8. And some are delivering a 5, some is like a 8, some is a 7. It's just inconsistent. One week, one project, he's delivering that. The next is that. So it was just like, man, I can't deal with this because the client is on your back as well, right? They've got not much money. So they still expecting the 10 out of 10 that they see up there because you're like trying to climb. So you're promising all these things. Like, oh yeah, I'm great. I'm going to organize it. And then you've got all these subbies. So I was just like, I cannot deal with this shit anymore. This is just killing me. Like, I literally can't. Relying on other people and their bullshit was just killing me. So I was just like, scrap, I'm starting over. And I was like, I'm hiring everyone in-house. And I remember someone was like, man, you can't do that because you can't control your costs. I was like, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to sacrifice. I don't care if I make profit. Don't make any profit for 2 years, right? I've bought my house. I've got a car. I'm happy with a little amount of money that I can take. I know I can live off that. I can pay my mortgage and whatever. I'm building a company. I'm ready to build this now, construction. And so I hired the first person, and then I started hiring the second, the third, the fourth. And then it was like, I just sent them back. It's like, if it's dog shit, go back. And they'll be like, what do you mean go back? It's going to cost more money. It's just like, I don't care, go back. It literally got to the point where it was like becoming a joke in the company. He's just like, he's going to just tell you to go back. It was like, come give me some substandard work. Client complained about something. I wouldn't even go check. I just ring the client and be like, they'll be like, yeah, no. It's just like, sorry, mate, you got to go back and do it properly. And I was making no money on some projects. Like sometimes I was making a loss, but I knew what I'd signed up to. I was like, I have to raise everyone to at least like a 7 out of 10 at first. Let's get everyone to a 7 out of 10, and then I could try and raise them to an 8 or hire an 8 and get them to then raise up to this guy's 8. And it was painful, man. And like eventually the guys just got it. They were just like, that's how you build culture. It was like, man, I don't want to go back. So I'm just going to do it right the first time. You know, it sounds crazy, yeah? But it's like literally the only way to do it. And then suddenly you have a team. Some people leave, some people join. The culture's built. It's like, do it right the first time. If you make a mistake, it's fine. Russell's paying for it. Imagine, and I'm paying for every mistake, right? It's not like go back and it's coming out your money. I, for some reason, never did that. I maybe would have changed that looking back, because the amount of money that got wasted is unbelievable. But yeah, so then you're starting to build a culture like the electrical team. Like we weren't staying till 8:30, but it was like the culture was you're going back. So make sure you do it right the first time. There is no world that exists where I'm accepting below an 8 out of 10. And then, yeah, it kind of built up from that. And then, you know, doing more projects, bigger projects everywhere. So people think they can like say, oh, I just want to work in Wimbledon. And maybe it does work, But I was just like, I'll take a Wimbledon in Stoke. I'll take a job in Stoke Newington, one in Chiswick, one in Wimbledon, one in Dulwich, one in like, it didn't matter. If it was in the M25, I'm going. And like, I was doing it. I didn't even care if it was profit or not. And the other thing I did, which was, for me, is a game changer. I did all my friends' houses. Like, so if a friend was like, oh, one of my first friends gave me my first extension. Shout out to Lucas. He was like, do you know what? I've seen you my whole life. Like, I know what you're about. So I know you're not going to fuck me over. And I know you're going to do a good job. And I was like, damn right. And he gave me the job, and I knew working with him, he was going to hold me to an accountable. He was going to try and take a little bit more from me, because that's what friends do. And I was comfortable with that, because he was going to be direct and honest and not allow me to get away with anything. And I needed that accountability at that time, because I was trying to build something substantial. And I've worked for all 6 of my groomsmen. I've transformed all of their houses. I've never fallen out with any of them. I had to deal with their missuses. I had to deal with their bullshit. I had to deal with them asking more from me, calling me back. But I learned so much. I probably condensed, so people don't believe you can collapse time. Like, I collapsed 2-3 years time by working with all my friends and making sure I didn't fall out. Because, you know, we could all easily fall out with people. It's just like, they're taking the piss, they're going back. You know, even sometimes my missus will be like, are you really going to go back again? It's just like, yeah, I signed up to this. I knew what I was getting in myself in for. And like, they all have beautiful homes, and I've transformed all of them. I'm really proud of that. But they also taught me a lot, you know, because they were brutally honest about every single step of the process.
Just going forwards a bit now, your business is very different now. It's grown a lot. I think your business model's changed. What led you to change? What was the mindset shift there? I really like this explanation you've given of, you know, seeing the lay of the land and seeing that it's not going to work subbing out all these little jobs, the quality shit. What changed where you've now grown and you've had a mindset shift?
So I guess I built the company in a different way. So there was like the standardized process, which is get the project, sub it out, right? So even now I'm in that higher echelon of like construction. I still don't adopt that. I could easily adopt it now because I could afford to hire. And I do use good subbies, by the way. I have a bit of a mix and blend now. But my what I did, you mentioned I had like 30 guys. First, I kept my electrical team. So I'm still very profitable in my electrical team because we know what we're doing inside out. So I still have a very core trade inside that, like, I didn't just let them go. Like, they still exist. They actually do more commercial. So I'm like keeping them in commercial to keep that door open. So if I decide to expand, I can go into the commercial world, and I'm learning the same way I learned when I was a Sparky. I'm learning about how the commercial world works and all the bullshit that goes on in there. But with the guys, what my methodology was, right, I need someone who can do every single part of the trade. And then, because if I bring someone on, a subby, and they try to fuck around or fuck me over or like not turn up or whatever, that I have someone who can quickly replace them and do their job slower but to a higher quality. So that was the first process, was like, make sure you can do absolutely everything in-house. And once I built that, and you know, at first I was quite soft, I'm quite a trusting person, so people would take the piss. Like, once I'd built quite a big team, good team, you know, then you then need to start weeding out the troublemakers and the people who are not really, don't see that you're trying to build something bigger to last longer. So like, I would constantly saying, like, please stop turning up late, and then not doing anything about it. Please don't turn up hanging to the job. You know, all these little things that, you know, companies have to deal with. Then I was just like, right, I'm now in a position to flick the switch. I was like, I'm giving everyone 3 warnings. After 3 warnings, you're gone. So I remember the first guy, when I said this, I even remember the job. It was in Dulwich. Amazing guy, amazing skilled craftsman, yeah. But he would get paid on a Friday fortnightly, and every time on the Monday he just wouldn't turn up. And we had a thing where we'd always have 3 guys on site. So if at least one person didn't turn up, there was someone still to open the door, and then that person can't be on their own, right, for health and safety. So this guy would always put us in a situation. So I told him, I was like, mate, I'm being serious this time. This is not a joke. The problem is when you constantly say, and the culture at the time, as Russell always says and doesn't do. And third time I sacked him. And, you know, it was really difficult because I was like, this guy's so good. When he turned up, he was on it. But I was like, this is the next level now. The next level is like, we can't have these people. And slowly but surely, I just weeded out anyone with the 3 chance thing until you get a team. I remember yesterday, a guy came and spoke to me who runs a construction company, but it was his house that we're working next to. He was like, oh, how did you manage to build such a big team all in-house? And I was just like basically saying the same thing to you. It's like, treat them well enough that they don't want to leave, but teach them as much as you can that they can leave if they wanted to. And as you guys know, most people just can't be bothered with the stress of doing what I've just explained to get to where I have. You know, it's an arduous journey. I've probably made it sound quite sexy and like fun, but like there's a lot of turmoil and stress and frustration and dark days involved in that, as many of the construction owners will know about. So I think hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. I think we should maybe come back to like very recent. You're a new dad. How's that changed your perspective? And what are you thinking? How has that changed maybe the direction of the business? How you're spending your time in the business?
Yeah, man. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, I'm a new dad. His name's Raphael. He's 3 months and 2 weeks old. As a boy, obviously. For me, it's amazing. So 2 things. I have been building everything knowing that eventually I really wanted to have children, and I waited. My missus was ready to have a kid a long while back. But I wanted to make sure that I was a present dad, and I wanted to make sure that I'd be able to be there, not just traveling loads. So I've made a lot of conscious decisions. Like my office is 4 minutes walk from my house, and eventually we will move. But like we've already decided, we've just done it up. We're going to stay here at least another 2 years. So that's an important thing that when I was building the company, I really thought about that. I think many people don't think about, when they eventually have a family, how's that going to work? And yeah, what's changed, man? The first thing is like everyone tells you that, it's going to be tiring. Most of the people I speak to was like, it's going to be so tiring. You're never going to have time. Baby's crying all the time. Your life is over. And like, in a weird way, I was like laughing a lot. Because I was just like, in my head, I knew that wasn't going to be my story. Like, that's not my narrative. Like, that's your narrative and your situation, but like, that's not mine. I think that's always important to the listeners, is to remember, like, a lot of people tell you how it is. That doesn't have to be how it is. You can have it however you want to. You might need to go through that dark process, but, and JP was one of the first people that was like, really excited. You could see in his eyes and the way when I was telling him when I first started working with you, or even before you started working with you guys, chatting, and like he was very happy, and he just like could see this amazing look in his eyes, which I resonated with, and that's the side I was expecting and that I wanted to hear about more. And so the first thing is, it's a little bit tough the first week, but you have so much more energy. For me, on a personal level, like, I am knackered, but I have more energy. I'm actually doing more since he's been born, like, than before he was born. Like, I've taken on more responsibilities. I'm taking on more activities. I'm more present, actually, with my wife and spend more time with them. Doing this podcast, like, before, like, I'm just finding time and energy to do more. And I'll be honest, the problem with me is like, I think you get that extra energy so that you can be present I'm sure it's like a human condition that's over generation. You have a baby, man needs to carry on and still go get food and hunt and gather and still be present and whatever else. But I've been doubling down on that energy. I've been like, what? This is some free boost of energy. I'm going to just like use it all up. But yeah, it's been amazing. It's an amazing experience. And I grew up religious. I wouldn't say I'm not religious, but I'd say I'm more spiritual now. And there's this Bible verse that I came across the other day, and this is not me preaching a religion to anyone, by the way. It's just something that I thought quite esoterically fits to the situation that I'm in. And it was like it's Matthew 10 verse 12, and it's like, for those who have more will be given, and they shall have abundance. For those that do not have, what they have will be taken away. And it goes back to a theme that I've been kind of talking about on this podcast: scarcity and abundance, right? And it's like, when I see him, I feel like I already have everything I could ever want, truly, deep down in my heart, right? And I guess that's how everyone feels when they have kids. And maybe some people, you see their whole life transform, they become 10 times more successful. And I think it's because of that verse. You know, what's being said there is like if you have abundance in your heart, and if you can apply that to every aspect of your I have enough, I have more than enough. Generally, the universe has this crazy way of just giving you more and giving you more and giving you more. If you think about the people who are like hoarding and very scarce with their resources and hide it. And I used to be a little bit like that in business. In my life, I've always generally tried to be abundant, but like I remember in business, like holding ideas and hoarding ideas and not giving contacts away. I've completely changed now since my son's born. Like if someone asks me for a number, I give it. You know, I don't try to make a pound out of it. Before it was like, I'm not giving you that. I need to make sure I'm getting some money out of it. That's been one of the two biggest shifts. Is like, actually, I have more energy, and two, I've realized no matter how successful I become, for me, it's just a journey, and I just enjoy the process. I want more, and I want to have more for my family, but not because of what more is, because of the journey of getting more and what that excitement could look like.
I think I resonate a huge amount with what you say there, Russell, because I think I feel like I went through a similar experience, and I almost feel like we should end it on such a high and positive note with where we've left it. And it pains me to say this because I was really keen, and I'm hoping, and maybe we can tease another episode for the audience and for you, Russell, and related to this abundance thing, is we're currently in a market in construction where basically everybody I speak to, other than you, tell me there's no fucking work, there's nothing out there, like it's really dry. I'm kind of, you know, scaling down, like really, you know, very kind of down market, and I speak to you and it's like there's so much work, there's so many inquiries coming in.
I can't even deal with it.
and I think a lot of it is around the abundance piece, and a lot of it I think is around your approach and your investment in marketing. And I would love to have you back on, Russell, to talk about both of those, how they overlap, and give some insight to others that, you know, would like to kind of replicate that. So is that a deal? We've got a deal.
Yeah, 100%,
back on,
guys. I'm happy to be a long-standing, continuous guest amongst your many other guests when you feel appropriate. The time is right.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time, Russell.
No, it's a pleasure.